we've explained the ayah about halfway through. So just a bit of review, inshallah. We'll go through pretty much the whole ayah, inshallah, again. Just very briefly, because there are a few things that we didn't get to. And then the next ayah is packed with so many things, and I'm just afraid that we might not have enough time. So with that, inshallah, we'll start with ayah number 76. So ayah number 76, Yusuf alayhi salam at this point, he had there was a caller who called out to say that somebody has stole something, stopping the caravan before leaving Egypt, right? The entire caravan had stopped by the call of somebody who's saying, "Indeed, you are all thieves." And by saying that, they responded, or the brothers at least, they responded by saying, "You know us because we came the first time and we didn't cause any trouble," right? Now the second time, it's not likely that we would do that. So after having that conversation, they established the punishment of the one who's guilty of thieving or stealing, right? They established that first before even going to investigate. Now, we mentioned that this establishment of the punishment prior to actual knowing who it is was a very intelligent way that Yusuf had set up the plan to dissuade any type of forgive me, I'm trying to find a word where you're like, I think that person did it. It's suspicion. Astaghfirullah. So this dissuading any suspicion from the brothers, right? To say that if they found out that Binyamin was the one, and then they came up with a punishment that was a bit lighter, because remember when we said the punishment of stealing in Egypt was what? The capital punishment, right? And the punishment in Canaan, where they came from, was just enslavement, right? So why would the minister, right, Yusuf alayhi salam, why would he change the capital punishment to a lighter punishment after finding out who Binyamin was? If he was the one that stole it, it would be suspicious, correct? Now, subhanAllah, it leads back to kind of like his planning and the intelligence that Yusuf alayhi salam had. And I'm trying to build up the story and grandiose kind of scheme of Yusuf alayhi salam and making sure that you guys know how smart he is, right? Because it goes back to the beginning of the surah, when Allah says, وَنُعَلِّمُهُ, and Allah is the one that's teaching him, right? So we go on. Binyamin alayhi salam was found. So in the ayah it says, فَبَدَأَ بِعَوْعَتِهِمْ. Yusuf alayhi salam started with the brothers first. They searched through their luggages or their things, and then they went along, and then finally they went to Binyamin. And at that point they found astakhrajaha, they pulled it out and they found the goblet or the cup or whatever you want to call it, right? Min wi'a'i akhihi. He found it from the luggage of his brother, right? Now, we continue to say, كَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after we've established that Yusuf alayhi salam was intelligent, that he is his genius of coming up with a plan like this, imagine how strong Egypt became after having him work for Egypt, right? If we put Yusuf in Amazon, for example, nobody can beat it. Right? Does that make sense? Like Yusuf alayhi salam, his skills and intelligence was amazing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, He comes in the exact perfect moment of the story, and He says, وَكَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف. And this is how we plan for Yusuf. Is Allah this whole time? We're here talking about Yusuf alayhi salam, how great he is as a person. And yes, he is, because Allah chose him as a prophet. But we have to understand, Allah is the one that planned all of this. وَكَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف. And this is how we plan for Yusuf. And in fact, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the end of this ayah, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. And above everyone who owns or who is knowledgeable, anybody who is knowledgeable, there's always someone who's more knowledgeable than that person. Right? A person for example, all my knowledge was taken from my shuyukh, from Sheikh Abdul Bari, from Sheikh Farid, from all the shuyukh that I studied with in Saudi. But my knowledge is not comparable to their knowledge. And what about their sheikh? And ultimately it goes back to who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah is telling us here, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Above everybody who has knowledge is someone who is more knowledgeable. Allah is reminding us that even to the point of your thinking, your intellect, Allah is the one that's in control of it. Right? So this is something kind of like when Allah interjects Himself into these moments in the story, is building up to such a high moment, and Allah says, wait, don't forget that I'm the one that causes this. Right? So going back to وَكَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف مَا كَانَ لِيَأْخُذُ أَخَاهُ فِي دِينِ الْمَلِكِ. Allah explains, He says, there is no way that, He says, he could not have taken his brother under the law of the king. Because remember, when the law of the king was what? Capital punishment. Right? If we look at this one ayah, there's so many things that could have gone wrong. The plan of Yusuf alayhi salam, at this moment, if it didn't go the way he planned it, Binyamin could have received the punishment. The punishment of Egypt. Right? Or the 10 brothers could have found out who Yusuf really was because of the suspicion. Right? There's so many things. Like the servants of Yusuf alayhi salam, wouldn't they question Yusuf and what he was doing? Maybe, I'm just speculating here, but maybe the servants, they saw Yusuf. He was such a good person that even if he did something like this, they wouldn't question it. They wouldn't question Yusuf because they knew who he was. And if you see somebody maybe talking to a girl outside or something like that, if you know who that person was, you would have husnul dhan. You'd be like, no, astaghfirullah. Shaitan, I'm not going to listen to you. I know my brother. Maybe he's talking to her because there's a reason. Do you understand? I mean, for example, the king of Egypt, alayhi salam, astaghfirullah, the king of Egypt during that time, he could have found out and interject and be like, wait, hold on, why are you doing this? But he didn't, because he gave Yusuf alayhi salam free reign, complete control. He trusted Yusuf, and even in this case, it didn't say that he came in and it's like, hold on, this is my kingdom, right? What are you doing? There's so many elements that it could have caused this plan to go sideways, but no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He says, Yusuf alayhi salam could not have taken his brother if they were following the deen of the Malik, the deen of the king, meaning his system, right? His rulings and his laws. If they followed his laws, Yusuf alayhi salam wouldn't have been able to take him as a slave. And that's what he planned. Yusuf alayhi salam, his whole plan was to take his son as a slave. Now, later on, we find out that Yusuf alayhi salam, that was just one step to ultimately provide the ability to bring all of his family. Does that make sense? He's doing this. Yes, he's taking his brother first. But this is just one step in his whole scheme of things. To be able to convince the brothers to go back a third time. 3 times, ikhwan. This journey is not easy. But he's convincing his brothers to go back again and tell his dad. And finally he brings his dad to, I'm spoiling the story for you guys, but it, subhanAllah, is such a structured plan. It's so amazing. And every time it goes into this kind of like this wave, Allah says, wait. Yes, this is the best story. But who's in control? Right? SubhanAllah. So he says he couldn't have taken his brother as a slave if it wasn't for Allah's plan, right? إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ نَرْفَعُ دَرَجَاتٍ مَّن نَشَاءُ. Allah says, except for those who Allah wills. نَرْفَعُ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah raises the ranks, مَن نَشَاءُ, whoever He wants. Now, we think about Yusuf alayhi salam. We think about Binyamin. Yusuf alayhi salam was one of the lowest of the low in society. Binyamin is struggling with his brothers back in Canaan. And they're coming from a poor place. And Allah is telling us here, Allah is raising the ranks of those He wants. Whoever He wants. Right? And remember this moment, because I'm going to tie it back to one point at the end and how we can be raised in ranks. We, today, in 2023. How can we get higher in our ranks? Yes? Before I go on, there's 2 goals that I have for today. And one of those goals is sharing the true side of our enemy. Our enemy. That's goal number 1. Goal number 2 is remembering that Allah, yes, He is the most Al-Kareem, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. This whole entire story, I've only been talking about how Allah is gracious and merciful and kind. For the longest time, for months, I have been trying my best to talk about Allah's adhab, Allah's punishment. Because it's not enough to just remember when Allah is the most kind and the most merciful. We have to remember that Allah gets angry. And His anger is unmatched. And we have to know His punishment. Otherwise, we'll only be flying with one wing. We'll only be flying in this dunya with one wing, and the other wing is not working. We have to be balanced. And finally, I was able to find, inshallah, the moment in which I'm able to share that with you guys. Bismillah. So ayah number 77. قالوا إن يسرق فقد سرق أخ له من قبل. Now, they found out that Binyamin was the one who was a person who they found the cup in his saddlebag. The brothers respond here. The brothers say, قالوا, they say, if he stole, if he was the one that stole, فَقَدْ سَرَقَ أَخًا لَهُ مِنْ قَبْلِ. It's just like his brother that stole before. Which brother are they talking about? Yusuf alayhi salam. Now keep in mind, yesterday there was a brother who asked me after class, he's like, do the brothers know that they're talking to Yusuf this whole time? Right? And I was like, no, they're not. They don't know yet. This whole entire time, Yusuf alayhi salam, his plan was so good that they didn't even have one hint or an idea that could have been Yusuf. Right? So now they're saying, in front of Yusuf's face, without knowing who he is, they said, if Binyamin stole, right? Keep in mind, all of the brothers are there. There's no other brothers back home that they're talking about. Every single brother, the 12 brothers, the 12 stars that we talked about in a dream, they're all there right now. So they're saying, if Binyamin stole, he's just like the other brother. He's just like the other brother who stole before him. Right? فَأَسَرَّهَا يُوسُفُ فِي نَفْسِهِ وَلَمْ يُبْدِهَا لَهُمْ. This is what Yusuf did. Now, pay attention. Because a lot of us, we go through life and we have people in our lives that speaks bad about us. Behind our backs, in front of our faces, we have family members who causes our life to be such depression. So, this is the answer. Yusuf alayhi salam does. Yusuf alayhi salam, asarraha, sir. Asarraha comes from the word sir. He hid something within himself. Fi nafsihi. He didn't expose himself. Walam yubdiha lahum. And he didn't reveal a thing to them. Remember, he was trying to hide his plan. So this kind of like hints to two reasons. He didn't want to expose his plans from the weakness of his heart, because obviously this affected him. My brothers, the 10 brothers who I haven't seen in decades, the ones who took me away from my father, who threw me in the well, who got me to here and caused all this stress in my life, now they're talking bad about me right in front of my face.
Lying about it.
There's a background story to it, which I was debating not to share because it's not fine. I'll share it inshallah. Now, some of the Mufassirin, they mention about this moment here. They say that Yusuf alayhi salam, his mother, Yusuf's mother. Now this is like a background story of this ayah. Yusuf's mother commanded Yusuf to go and steal or take the idol of their great grandfather, of the grandfather of the other side of the family, the other wife of Yaqub, to take it, and then so that, you know, because it's a fitrah that they had that we shouldn't be worshiping idols. So once he did that, the news spread throughout the family, and they knew that Yusuf was somebody who stole. Now the authenticity to this is, I'm not too sure. And I didn't do enough research to feel comfortable to share it with you today. So take it with a grain of salt. Inshallah. Don't. Inshallah.
Sheikh Mohammed.
Naam.
For me, this is the first time I hear about it. So, like the other children of Yaqub alayhi salam, they were worshipping Allah.
They
were worshipping Allah.
They were worshiping Allah.
But their mother or their grandparents, they were worshipping something else, or I did not click.
هذا هو ما يعني ما تأكدت في شو اسمه هذا that's why I didn't want to share it, but since it came up, I want to clarify. And again, like I'm not sure. I would defer to possibly Sheikh Abdul Bari, maybe, or someone who's more knowledgeable than I.
Sheikh Mohammed.
No.
But we know something. I mean, the grandfather of Yusuf alayhi salam, the father side.
Yeah.
We know all of them was Anbiya.
Anbiya, no.
Yeah. Which means we're not talking about all of them. Yeah, but the mother side could be.
لا.
We don't know.
I'll just end it there. Inshallah.
Okay.
Wallahu ta'ala alam. I wasn't comfortable sharing it. That's
We'll research that.
inshallah. خلاص. So Yusuf alayhi salam, his response was to keep it inside of himself. And wallahi, this is the best response. Why? There is no reason for us to retaliate. It doesn't benefit. In fact, if you just smile, wallahi, it would put like a dot in their heart. And eventually, inshallah, those dots will soften the heart of the person that does something to you. Just smile. That's all you have to do. Because every time you smile, you are rewarded. And that reward of that smile is better than a smile to other people. Why? Because that smile is towards your own family. Because there's something called in Islam, silatul rahim. Silatul rahim is enjoining relations with your close family members. And this is one of the best deeds that you can do. Do you understand? Between you and your brothers, between you and your aunts and uncles, between you and your cousins, your blood relatives, even though if they're not Muslims, the power of a smile is significant. Especially when, they're in some kind of like sour relationship with you. Yes? And then Yusuf alayhi salam responds, he says, قَالَ أَنْتُمْ شَرٌّ مَكَانًا. Indeed, you guys are in a place that is worse than before. You guys are in a bad place. وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا تَصِفُونَ. And Allah is the one that knows what you're claiming. SubhanAllah, his reply is actually very profound here. He says, you guys are in a place worse than before. شَرٌّ مَكَانًا. Why? Because they never got better. From the time when they threw him into the well, up until now, they never changed. Right? They still had that jealousy inside of them. It's still in them. This is the danger of jealousy. It can last a long time and is very dangerous. So he's saying that you guys are even worse now than before. And Allah is the one that knows the truth of what you're claiming about that other brother. You said that he stole. Allah is the one that knows the truth. What a beautiful response. He didn't get upset. Now, another element that we can focus on is that Yusuf alayhi salam, he could have easily just punished his brothers. Easily. Because he had a place of authority. And nobody would question him. No one would question what Yusuf could have done to the brothers. He could have put them in jail. He could have called to give them the capital punishment. And just make up whatever. Right? If somebody doesn't have patience and you are in a place of authority, that is very dangerous. If you are a police officer, like a lot of police officers now, they abuse their authority just because they know they can get away with it. Judges, they sit there and they take money on the side to free the one that's guilty and put the one that's not guilty in prison. Why? Because they have authority. If you abuse your authority, Wallahu a'lamu bima tasifun. Allah knows what you're claiming. Allah knows what you're doing. Yusuf alayhi salam, he could have easily done that. But his fear in Allah, I'm not saying that he wanted to, but just, for example, if I were in Yusuf's position, and I'm be like, man, these guys, I'm gonna punish them because they're not changing, they won't change, and if I get rid of them, I could just go send my entourage, go get my father and khalas. I'll just get rid of them. I'll go get my father myself. Right? Easy way. But no, Yusuf alayhi salam, he did it right. And he did it right by his brothers and his family members as well. Now, I wanted to speak about jealousy. The roots of jealousy and how jealousy lasted this long and how we can understand that, right? First of all, is a sickness of the heart. Jealousy is a sickness of the heart. And the only answer that I found personally, I cannot find anything else. I'm not saying that I'm somebody who's knowledgeable, but the only thing that worked with me, the only medicine to this disease is the Quran. It cured my jealousy completely. The thing that I was jealous of, once I started learning the Quran, it was nothing. Before, wallahi, it was so difficult to let go. It was very difficult. I couldn't let it go. But when Quran came into my life, nothing was easier. Now, the root of jealousy started with Iblis. Iblis, when he was told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this story is recognized in several places in the Quran. Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس قال أأسجد لمن خلقت طينا قال أرأيتك هذا الذي كرمت علي لئن أخرتني إلى يوم القيامة لأحتنكن ذريته إلا قليلا. Allah tells us in Surah Al-Isra, He says, Allah commanded everybody, all the angels, to bow down to Adam alayhi salam. The only one that didn't bow down إِلَّا إِبْلِيسِ, except for Iblis. And he says, why should I bow down? Why should I make sujood to somebody who is made from خَلَقَةَ طِينًا? Teen, dirt. Logically, you think about it, dirt is nothing. We, even in our cultures, if you say you throw dirt in somebody's faces, it's like an act of lowering that person, right? If you throw dirt on somebody's face, it's like you're disgraced. Does that make sense? Iblis here, he's saying, why should I make sujood to teen, to dirt? Why should I do that? He's questioning Allah, right? قال أرأيتك هذا الذي كرمت علي لئن أخرتني إلى يوم القيامة. Now this is a promise by Iblis. He says, he's requesting Allah's permission. If you just delay me until Yawm al-Qiyamah, he says, لَأَحْتِيَنَّكَ ذُرِّيَّتَهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. He says, I will mislead not just him. This is what jealousy does. He says, I will mislead his whole progeny. His whole entire, every children that he has until Yawm al-Qiyamah. What kind of jealousy is that? It's not enough for Iblis to take his revenge on Adam and his child. In fact, his jealousy was so deep that it lasted till today. And it will last till Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is jealousy. And this is what it does to a previous servant of Allah. Surah Al-A'raf. Iblis, he says, قال فبما أغويتني لأقعدن لهم صراطك المستقيم ثم لآتينهم من بين أيديهم ومن خلفهم وعن أيمانهم وعن شمائلهم ولا تجد أكثرهم شاركين. I forgot to mention Surah Al-Isra. He says, I will mislead every single one of his progeny. إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. He says, except for a very few. Now this should be like it should give you goosebumps. It's chilling to know that Iblis himself, he says, I will mislead all of them, إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, except for a few. I ask Allah to make us one of the few, because it's very scary that it's only a little bit. And then Surah Al-A'raf, Iblis, he says, he's pretty much saying, establishing that we're in a war. We are in a war. He says, I will lead them astray, and I will ambush them. Ambushing is like when your army is going to a certain place, right? And that place is covered with mountains. The only exit is behind you and in front of you. You can't go right and left. When you ambush somebody, you get them in a place where they cannot go and they cannot escape. This is what he's saying. He's going to ambush us. He says, min bayna aydihim. He's going to come between us. Min khalfihim, from behind us. وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ, from the right and from the left, and from the front. صح? No. Well, مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ, meaning kind of in front of you because it's in between your hands. And then he's saying from your right and from your left and from the back. وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ شَارِكِينَ شَاكِرِينَ عفوا. He says, those people that I lead astray, most of those people, what is their problem? Why am I able to lead them astray? Why? أَكْثَرُهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. Because most of them, they're not thankful to Allah. That's it. Iblis, he's able to ambush us because we are not of the thankful ones. That's the answer. It's simple. It's very simple. As long as you recognize Allah and you are grateful and thankful to Allah, Shaitan can ambush you. He might be able to get you from the right, or from the left, or from the front, or from the back. But in all areas, if you are shakirin, no. Yes? Surah Taha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فأكلا منها فبدت لهما سوآتهما وطفقا يخصفان عليهما من ورق الجنة وعصى آدم ربه فغوى ثم اجتباه ربه فتاب عليه وهدى. Allah is telling us here, Adam alayhi salam, they both, him and his wife, ate from the forbidden tree. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Iblis led them astray. Iblis led them astray. And Allah chose them to be able to turn them back to Allah through forgiveness. So once you are led astray, so I'm talking about the steps here. Iblis, he made a commitment to mislead us. And he's only able to mislead us because we are not thankful. And if we are misled, how can we go back? In the case of Adam alayhi salam, Allah tells us all he had to do is ask Allah to forgive him. If you are in fact misled, ask Allah to forgive you. And you will be surely, inshallah, be back on the right path. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to say in Surah Taha, قال اهبطا منها جميعا بعضكم لبعض عدو فإما يأتينكم مني هدى فمن تبع هداي فلا يضل ولا يشقى ومن أعرض عن ذكري فإن له معيشة ضنكا ونحشره يوم القيامة أعمى قال رب لم حشرتني أعمى وقد كنت بصيرا قال كذلك آتتك آياتنا فنسيتها وكذلك اليوم تنسى. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in ayah number 23 of Surah Taha, he says to Adam alayhi salam and his wife, both of you go down together. It's interesting because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Jami'a, all of you, but there were only two, Adam and his wife. Some of the scholars mention that it is actually all of humanity has been banished from Jannah. Well, I don't know if it's banished. Banished is like not going. You're not able to go back, right? So it's not banished. It's like they are.
Expelled.
Yeah. So like you know you leave Jannah to possibly be able to go back, right? It's not banishment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, both of you leave, or actually all of you leave, because He says Jami'an. Some of the scholars say it's actually all of humanity, right? بعضكم لبعض عدو فإما يأتينكم مني هدى فمن تبع هداي فلا يضل ولا يشقى. Ayah number 124. But whoever man أعرض, I'll explain. Some of you are an enemy to some others. Some of you will be enemies to others, which is true. Human beings, they will always have enemies, whether it's between countries or whether it's between families. Then if there comes to you guidance from me, from Allah, then whoever follows my guidance will neither go astray or will neither be distressed. So when Allah teaches us guidance, you will not go astray, nor you won't be living a life of stress. Remember what we said about the Quran. I found peace with the Quran. And when Allah sends you guidance, you won't go astray, inshallah, and you'll live this life in peace. Right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي. And whoever turns away from the remembrance of Allah, for him is a life of hardship. For him is a life of hardship. We shall raise him blind in the time of the day of resurrection. Blind. You cannot see. When it's Yawm al-Qiyamah, you will be raised because you turn your eyes away from guidance. You turn your eyes away from the Quran, and then thus you will be raised in Yawm al-Qiyamah blind. Because you turn a blind eye from the guidance, Allah will raise you up blind. And then they will respond to Allah, "Oh my Lord, oh Allah, why have you raised me up blind?" They're asking, while I had sight before. In this life I can see. Why now, Ya Allah, when you raise me back on the day of resurrection, why am I blind? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah will say to them, our ayah, our sign has come to you, but you disregarded it. So on this day, you will be tunsa. You will be forgotten. You forgot about the guidance of Allah, and on the day when you need Him most, you're the one that's forgotten. You will be neglected. That's why you are blind. There's a connection with Allah's words here. It's a beautiful connection. But this connection should send a warning to every single one of us. Now Allah has given us the greatest sign. This ummah, the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Allah has given us the greatest sign, the greatest miracle, the Quran. Let it be a warning to each and every one of us. If we turn a blind eye to the Quran, Allah will turn a blind eye to you on the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْزِي مَنْ أَسْرَفَ وَلَمْ يُؤْمِنْ بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِ وَلَعَذَابُ الْآخِرَةِ أَشَدُّ وَأَبْقَى. Allah says on ayah number 127 in Surah Taha, He says, وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي مَنْ أَسْرَفَ وَلَمْ يُؤْمِنْ بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِ. The way we punish whoever transgresses the bounds of Allah and doesn't believe in the signs of his Lord. The torment of hellfire, the torment of the hereafter, is far more severe and is everlasting. Whoever turns a blind eye of the sign of Allah, just know that Yawm al-Qiyamah, in the hereafter, the torment, the punishment of Allah is more severe than anything you could think of and is everlasting. وَأَبَقَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says also in Surah Al-Ra'd, لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَلَعَذَابُ الْآخِرَةِ أَشَقَّ وَمَا لَهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ مِن وَاقٍ. And Allah is telling us here, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيا. Those people, their punishment is not just the hereafter. Their punishment is also in this dunya. Is in this dunya, وَالْآخِرَةِ أَشَقَّ. It is a harder torment. It is even more difficult and more of a punishment in hereafter. So both, we are losing, we are missing out in both this life and hereafter. Because why? After Allah gave us the biggest opportunity, but we choose to turn a blind eye. For those people, your punishment is not just in this dunya. I mean, not just in the akhirah. Indeed, it's in this dunya as well. So I'll complete the ayah. We'll go back to the ayah in Surah Yusuf. فَأَصَرَّهَا يُوسُفُ فِي نَفْسِهِ وَلَمْ يُبْدِهَا لَهُمْ. Yusuf alayhi salam, he hid within himself the effects of the words of the brothers. وَلَمْ يُبْدِهَا لَهُمْ. And he did not expose his plan or himself to any. He didn't expose anything to the brothers. قَالَ أَنْتُمْ أَشَرٌ مَكَانًا. And they are in a worse position than before. وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا تَصِفُونَ. And Allah knows the claim of what. Allah knows better in what they're claiming. Now I want to stop there because we've spoken about Allah. And I wanted to extract kind of like an excerpt from Surah Taha. There was a lot that we mentioned in Surah Taha, and Surah Taha is just one of the most amazing surahs that I came across. So I want to share that with you today. What time is? SubhanAllah.
12 minutes.
Khalas, I'll try my best, inshallah. In the story of Musa alayhi salam, Surah Taha explains a certain part of the story Musa. Surah Taha, Musa alayhi salam, Allah commands Musa alayhi salam to go back to Fir'aun to warn him of a punishment that has to come. Musa alayhi salam, his job is to go back to warn Fir'aun of a punishment that is to come. Now, I want to focus on a very specific part of the story. Musa alayhi salam goes back. He goes to Fir'aun and he tells them about Allah and the punishment that is to come. Fir'aun, he had the audacity to discredit, he had the audacity to not only disbelieve in Musa alayhi salam and his message, but he has the audacity to discredit Musa alayhi salam so that people, not just him, but other people and his followers, do not listen to his message. And the way he does that is that Musa alayhi salam, he shows the signs that Allah gives Musa. The signs are that he can make a stick transform into a snake. A snake, right? And he's showing Musa right in front of his eyes, yet he says, no, you're just some magician. In fact, I have an army of magicians of my own. So I challenge you, pick a day and pick a time and pick a place. Meet me in that place and I will challenge what you have. I will challenge your message. So Musa alayhi salam, he goes and grabs all of his magicians. Right? What did I say? What did I say? I said Yusuf? I said Musa. Astaghfirullah. Forgive me. Fir'aun, he goes and grabs his army, right? His army of magicians. Some of the scholars actually mentions that there were a total of 70 magicians, 70 people, right? So he goes and they meet up into a coliseum or a place where a lot of people can witness all over the city. They come and it's like an event, a showing. So before the event starts, Musa alayhi salam, he says to the sahir, the magician, he says, I come with you with a warning, right? Ayah number 60, afwan. So he warns everybody at that stage. He warns everybody and he gives the message of Allah, right? Fir'aun, in ayah number 60, he turns away, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَتَوَلَّى فِرْعَوْنُ فَجَمْعَ كَيْدَهُ ثُمَّ أَتَى. He turns away and then he tries to devise a plot. He turns away because he has to think. And then some people say that he discussed with his ministers or the magicians, and he comes back with his plot. And then Musa says to all of them, قال لهم موسى ويلكم لا تفتروا على الله كذبا فيسحتكم بعذاب وقد خاب من افترى. Musa alayhi salam says, woe to you. Now when you say ويلكم, it means to warn a person, to grab their attention, like listen to my warning. ويلكم. Do not invent a lie against Allah. Because what is he doing? He is showing Allah's message. He's trying to give them Allah's message, but they are trying to take that message and turn it into a lie, saying that that message is just magic. That's what they're doing. He says, woe to you. Do not mess with the message of Allah. Don't make this message a lie. He says, He would destroy you by he says وَلَا تَفْتَرُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا فَيُسْحِتَكُمْ بِعَذَابٍ, lest he should destroy you by complete torment. Meaning, like, there is a punishment if you lie about Allah. We know in Islam, if you take the Quran and you try to mess with the words and you try to lie about Allah, that's one of the worst things you can do. This is what they're doing. They're taking the message and they're trying to lie about the message of Allah. Surely the ones who invents a lie against Allah will fail. And they will fail miserably. Right? فَأُلْقِيَ السَّحَرَةُ So after that happens, the events, I don't want to take too much time because we're almost finishing. The event took place. You know, the magicians, they went first. They threw the staff and stick, and they just kind of like, you know, they did their magic, and they turned their staff into a snake. Yes? Now it's Musa's turn. Musa alayhi salam, he takes a staff and he drops it. He throws the staff and it becomes a snake. Now, some of the scholars, they mention in this case, the magicians never seen anything like that. They never ever seen anything like it. Allah never really explained what really happened, but a lot of the scholars said that whatever happened was something so amazing that it made the professional magicians who can see, who can notice the slightest of hands, be able to change just like that. The professionals. If the professionals are convinced, then wouldn't we be convinced? If the doctors say that, if you eat apples, it will cause a sickness. They're the professionals. And if they tell us, we'll be like, oh, maybe they're right. Right? In the case of Musa, they believed immediately. So in the next ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَلْقِيَ السَّحَرَةُ سَاجِدًا. They fell down in prostration. They fell down into prostration after witnessing a miracle. Once they witnessed the miracle, they fell down. They couldn't hold their body up and they fell down into sujood. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَالَ آمَنْتُ لَهُ قَبْلَ أَنْ آذَنَ لَكُمْ. This is the evilness in Fir'aun's heart. He says, you believe in Musa before I even give you permission? You think psychologically, he is such a delusional person. He thinks that he can control people's hearts. He says, you are going to believe Musa before I give you the permission to believe in him? What a delusional person, right? Now, I'm out of time. There's a few more points that I want to mention, but with the lack of time, I wanted to mention this one point, inshallah. The magicians, after witnessing a miracle, they fell down into prostration. Aslamu. They submitted to the will of Allah. They witnessed a miracle and they submitted their hearts to Allah at that moment. Iman flooded their hearts at that moment. Does that make sense? What is our miracle, brothers? The Quran. If we just spend a few moments with the Quran, wallahi, Iman would flood your hearts and you have no energy to be able to hold yourself up, and you have to fall down into prostration because the Quran is a miracle. I ask Allah that He floods our hearts with imans through the miracle of the Quran. This is what the Quran can give us. All we need to do, my brothers, is just give some time to the Quran, and wallahi, it changes every single aspect of your life. Every single aspect. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وجزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.